Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching or listening to this. And welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and as always, joined by Francois Jeffrey. Francois, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome back to Atlanta.
Back to Atlanta, where it's nice and hot.
Yes, it is. It's actually a little toasty in the office. Usually, you saw me yesterday. I have my jacket, my blanket on, and it's a little warm in here today. So, but yeah. I'll take that over being cold any day of the week.
Any day. I'm the opposite, but it is.
What it is. I know. The fight over the fan is constant in our office. All right. Well, today we have the very lovely Chelsea Cohen joining us from presumably sunny Los Angeles. Chelsea, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good. What is the temperature in LA right now?
Oh boy, it's been in the 60s and 70s recently. Interestingly enough, there's supposed to be a heat wave coming up, but haven't seen it yet.
Gotcha. That makes me think of I've been to Los Angeles. Well, that's not true. I've been outside of Los Angeles, but been to California one time. And the only knowledge I have of a heat wave in LA is from this episode of New Girl, if you guys have seen that show. And everybody's ACs stop working and it's just riots in the streets, and it's people opening up fire extinguishers on each other to get portable AC units and fans in the store. I'm that's nuts. Oh my gosh.
Pillowcases in the freezer, sleeping at that time, laying down on the tile. We've had those experiences. I'm born and raised in LA. I'm living in Austin now, but those times when the AC goes out, the nights are the worst.
Oh gosh.
Pillowcases in a freezer.
Nights. Yeah.
You think
I've never heard of that.
It would cool off at night though, or is it just because there's so much heat trapped in the house, or does it just not cool off at night?
I mean, yeah, it cools off to a degree, but not fully. That's when there are the heat waves. Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, let's go on ahead and just jump straight into it then. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, originally from LA, living in Austin, but co-founder of SoStocked. Every time I read it, I want to say SoStocked because it's I'm so stoked to be here. Exactly. Yes. And then I'm it's SoStocked. I have to stop myself every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I started out selling on Amazon in 2014. I always had kind of an entrepreneurial background and, in fact, trying to make my own businesses when I was a kid and that type of thing. So I was always looking for something, I tried various different things and then finally came across Amazon, did an Amazon course. Immediately we had success and then we're able to quit our jobs, build a business, and really more so than selling on Amazon, fell in love with working with entrepreneurs. We actually came into consulting a lot of beginning Amazon sellers. We worked with Ryan Moran and at that time called The Tribe. He now has capitalism.com. But my husband and I became mentors for his initial program. And that led us to speaking on stage and, my copywriting agency that I started. So, kind of really grew up in the space working with Amazon sellers. And we really liked that. My husband and I liked that actually a lot more even than Amazon, selling on Amazon, just because we could actually influence and help people to improve our lives. We could see the direct, relationship. And so that was kind of how we started out. In 2018, that was when I kind of stumbled on, these inventory management issues and, led me down a different path and a different way of being able to help Amazon sellers.
So when you were a kid, let's back all the way up. I feel like Yoni now. What were some of those businesses that you said you were starting or wanting to start as a kid?
So my friends and I had something called LCBH Fresh Produce, and that was all of our initials. And basically we planted a garden and then we would go around with cherry tomatoes and we would sell them to the neighbors. We'd pull this little wagon and sell.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then there was another one I tried to start. My mom had a school, a little school in her house. And so I tried to start a school store until my neighbor got mad at me for for being too close to his car and that type of thing. Yeah.
So it's product based.
What's that?
It was always very product based. It was the cherry tomatoes. It was the store selling physical products. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's two routes, right? It could be service or it could be product.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because my mom, she told me that when I was 8 years old, she said something, oh yeah, when you have kids, and and I said, what do you mean when I have kids? And she's like, well, when you have kids, when you grow up. And she goes like, and I said, I'm not going to have kids. I'm going to be working. And I was like, that was my whole idea. Is like, I can't have kids. I'm going to be doing so many things. Of course, I now am, planning to have kids, but that was kind of my perspective was like, I'm going to, do these things in the world. And, that was my priority.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to be busy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'll only chase after these. So when you started selling on Amazon, you're still selling on Amazon, I take it, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Are you still selling the same product or within the same category, or have you kind of pivoted?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. In fact, one of our best sellers is still the initial product that we started out with.
Awesome. Very cool. And what category are you in? We never want to ask anybody to tell their product because I know it's very, very close to the best thing. But what category are you in? I'm just curious.
Yeah. In kitchen and grocery.
Kitchen and grocery. And again, cherry tomatoes.
Cherry tomatoes.
There you go.
Now, a quick question tracking back to when you started with the course. So I have my own opinions on courses. I think they can be, and I think it's evolved over time with talking to those that have taken courses and hearing that it's not really just this one thing that you sort of click through and then you can do it. Was this course more of a mastermind or an engaged course where you had other students and learning along the way? I guess, how did that work out with the course? And then before that, I'm sorry to put two parts to it, but were you selling before you took the course and then took the course because you wanted to scale up, or did you just start with the course and then start selling?
Right. So we started with the course. We had heard about this course, and it was one of the courses where, it's open every 6 months. So we heard about this course. We were actually trying to be entrepreneurs. We were doing a multi-level marketing thing and, selling a bunch of nothing, really. The product was like, you get a membership for discounts. And when I started looking at it, okay, set up a website. And then it was basically an affiliate website. Like one of the portions of what we were selling, on this multi-level marketing was an affiliate website where, I get an affiliate commission if someone buys through my website. And it was, a bunch of nothing that you're selling. So we were asking all of our friends, hey, want to join my deal? And they were like, oh, that sounds great. But we just, we're going to be starting this Amazon thing. And so we heard all of our friends, probably 3 people had told us about this Amazon thing. We heard one of our friends was making $60,000 a month selling on Amazon and had no experience previously. We go, okay, well, this is something we need to look into. So I did some research. Oh, the window closed. We hadn't signed up. And so I said, okay, well, we'll find something else. We did some research and found a course that was retail arbitrage. We really had no idea what the private label Amazon course was all about. So we started with this retail arbitrage thing, realized it was really a lot of work for a lot of nothing in terms of, what we were trying to get into. It's a great way to start, but we had money that we wanted to invest and we wanted to take off quickly. And so what ended up happening is someone wanted to cancel their course. And so that course ended up being sold, to us with the permission of the course owners. Was instead of canceling, they sold the course to us. And that was the point at which we actually found out what private label was. So we didn't really know what we were getting into. All we knew was our friend was making $60,000. We knew that this other way was not going to get us there really quickly. So we wanted whatever my friend was doing. And then once we bought the course, we paid $3,000 to a stranger, bought the course, and then I opened it up, saw the intro, and was like, oh my God, this is genius. This is brilliant. Let's go. So we started about a month behind everyone else. So we thought we were late. So we basically just went as quickly as possible and launched our product as quickly as possible. We thought we were behind everyone. When we got to the event, they had this, this event that everyone goes to in Vegas. When we got there, we found out that no, we're actually ahead of everybody. And most people didn't even have their products launched yet. And we had just made our first sales.
Wow. That's
and so
impressive.
was this more of just like a click through? Oh, I guess what level of engagement did you have to the course or to the coach or Or was it literally just like buying an SAT prep exam and then you do all of it yourself?
Yeah, it was definitely a do it all yourself. There was a Facebook group. I think part of the success that we've had, like we took off really quickly, and immediately we got invited to a mastermind. Some friends of ours were in a mastermind. We got invited to the mastermind and came on the mastermind, spoke to everyone on the mastermind and thought we were a part of this mastermind. Come to find out, we were just guests on the mastermind. So we're like, where's our link for the next week? And so we basically, weaseled our way into the mastermind. We started out as guests, and then a couple weeks later, we're like, hey, wait a minute. Why aren't we being invited back? I thought we were in this mastermind. Anyway, they had, I think it was a 10-person limit. Someone backed out. They added us in. And so becoming part of that mastermind group was really actually extremely helpful. One of the members of that mastermind is actually the founder of Managed by Stats. So that was kind of the group that we grew up with was, Philip Jepson from Managed by Stats. He was in the first mastermind that we were a part of. And so I think, if you are in a course atmosphere, you do need to align yourself also with people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. Not everyone's going to have, the same answers. People come to me sometimes and they ask me, give me advice on this. And I say, I haven't personally experienced that. If you go to the community, there's someone who's bound to have experienced the same thing as you. So being engaged was a huge part of, I think, our success in the Amazon space. It's not just the course, it's that you have to actually create a community.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did you, go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say, it sounded like she had a really good course with a lot of value. I'm waiting for the rest of your questions and you to share your thoughts.
Well, I was just wondering what level of detail, or back up, what level of experience did you have with supply chain before the course?
Yeah.
And then what did the course offer?
Right. I didn't have any experience with supply chain. That was one thing that I wish that I had known more about. It was just, you do the course, they say, go to Alibaba. And we actually took a lot of time. We spent a lot of time shipping inventory by air for, I think, the first 2 years of our business. Everything was by air. Of course, it was cheaper than it is now, but we shipped everything by air. And, and then the one time that we decided to ship by sea and to ship it pallets into Amazon, we were too late and we ended up getting there right after the cutoff time. So they lost our inventory right before Christmas. That was pretty stressful. So the whole supply chain and logistics aspect, we weren't extremely good at, which is one of the reasons why, I started diving into inventory and supply chain, because I realized you can waste a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing.
So did you learn, so the course didn't teach you too much about supply chain?
Right.
Is that, okay. Do you think that's just, and that's my take on it, that most courses don't dive too deep into the unsexy side, which is supply chain.
Yeah.
Which is hard because it's not cookie cutter, right? No two suppliers on Alibaba, for example, are going to be the same. You can't talk to them the same way. You can't negotiate with them the same ways. When you started off on Alibaba, I guess, what was your direction? What was your interaction level with suppliers? What did you have to pick up and learn?
Yeah.
And it sounds like, just like Carlos Alvarez, which we just spoke to, it was sort of the school of hard knocks. I'm sure there were some difficult times there.
Yeah. Our first product, it wasn't that difficult. We had, because we had this kind of fire under us that we were behind everyone by a month, and we didn't want to show up to an event and be so behind everyone. It was, okay, this is a product that I like. I'm going after it, send some samples. And I think it was one of the first samples that we got. We ended up just running with it. We had our own problems. Like, for example, the logo that was put on there was, we had tested it out, but we didn't test it out properly. It's a kitchen product, and, cooking oil comes into contact with it. It was actually an oil-based paint and came off with oil. So we had, given it to a friend of ours to test it out. Back then you could literally just drive a sample to a friend without having them buy it at all, have them test it out and write a review about it. Nowadays that's not possible, but that was kind of how we were doing it, driving it to our sisters and our friends. And she sent us a text with a picture of her finger literally wiping the logo off. And we're like,
wow.
So we're like, okay, well, that's happening. And, and then we had our shipment, the way that they packaged them, they had 100 units per carton, and like about 52. Yeah, exactly 52. I remember 52 units of the 1,000 were crushed. So they got, disposed of by Amazon. And I think that they sent them back to us, and then we repackaged them. We basically got, and then we had to reconfigure to 50 units per carton as opposed to 100. And so it's just things like that where, you don't really know, and you kind of have to deal with those things, as you go along. And just kind of we basically followed the lead of the supplier. They worked out all of the shipping and everything, but we didn't really explore how much money it was costing us. As long as we were profitable, we were okay. Mm-hmm. And then as time goes on and the price comes down on your product, as you got competitors, you start to really investigate where you can save money. And supply chain is one of those places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a tricky piece. It's a very complex piece because there's so many levels to it. There's supplier, the quality control inspectors, the freight forwarders, and you could have to incorporate your own customs broker, and then there's inventory. What made you land on inventory being the key piece to all of this? And I guess we definitely have to talk about SoStocked, and we have to talk about how that started. I know we talked about it back in like 2019, I think is when we first started talking about it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to learn a little bit about how that came about from having all these experiences.
Yeah. So it really was, looking at the profitability, as our price came down, as more competition came into the space, where was the money going? What could we control? We had gotten our price down on our products as much as possible. And so we started looking at other places where we were kind of bleeding money. And it came down to, stocking out, overstocking, placing large orders based on bad data, and then taking out loans, and then not being able to sell through all that inventory and pay off the loan. And then, into first quarter, you're paying on those loans. And so we realized there's a lot of our margin was being eaten up by just general inventory mistakes. And so I started looking at, I have to really get good at inventory. Early on in my, business life, I realized that, the things that I was afraid of are the things that I actually really need to kind of, face. One of the, early on back in the day, I was working in the film industry, and I had a film production company, and I was too afraid to make money because I was afraid that I was going to owe taxes that I didn't know that I was going to owe. And then I was going to, it was actually going to cost me more money than, just not making money at all. So so one of the things that I did is I actually went out and I worked at an accounting firm, and I learned all about taxes, and it became less of a scary subject. So that's something that I have, taken value from, is if something is, frightening to you, or if something is holding you back from really doing well, just kind of dive into that and really learn as much as possible, because then that stops being a blocker, because you can kind of plant that as a blocker to your success, either consciously or subconsciously. That's something that can tend to happen. So I found that was what was happening with inventory, and I really needed to explore inventory and actually get good at it.
And I feel like we can't talk about inventory and Amazon without talking about the change that was just made.
Yes.
So can you dive into that for listeners a little bit? Because at first the news broke and everybody was so excited. They're like, oh, great, no more 200 limit. And then I was like, there's a caveat here. Hold on, this might even be worse in some people's opinions. So can you dive into that for us?
Yeah. And the as soon as that came down and people were posting, yay, this is so exciting. I was like, well, wait a minute. It's Amazon, guys. Hold on. Did we really looked into this? And it was very interesting because Amazon announced it and applied the change as on the same day. And that normally doesn't happen. So they normally give you some, some runway. With the IPI change last year, they said, okay, you have until X date to get your inventory performance index score up to and above 500, or this is going to happen. And, with Brexit, they said, Brexit is coming. You have these months to figure it out. That didn't happen with this. And they basically announced, they're changing from per ASIN limits to basically across your catalog. It's across, it's called storage type limits, but it's basically catalog wide. So, that change, well, it seems like it would be a good thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. You could be overstocked on some of your slow moving products, and now that's eating into the availability for other products. So, it's not, it becomes pretty problematic for some people. A lot of people, some people are already overstocked, just because of this change. Like I think my storage limits personally dropped by 40% just overnight. And now I'm overstocked and can't send new stuff in. We've even had some of our users report that they got an email saying, we're going to cancel your any shipments over the limit. We're going to cancel them. So go back to your carrier and tell them to return the inventory to you. That's pretty problematic. Now we have heard that some people just kind of bit the bullet and just sent it to Amazon and saw what happened, and Amazon accepted it. And some said that no, it got returned. So we'll kind of have to see how exactly Amazon's going to handle it. And it seems like it's a crapshoot, but that is, for me personally, I would probably take the risk and deal with the consequences if they do arise. But it's kind of up to the individual seller as to what to do. But those are kind of some of the things that are coming up. And, we're kind of just navigating the waters since this was recently, like Thursday, I think is when it happened. It hasn't even been a week.
Yeah, it hasn't even been a week yet. Yeah, I think it was on the 22nd or the 23rd. So the 200 unit per ASIN limit was across the board for everybody, so long as you were within a certain bracket of user, either just too new or IPI was too low. You said it's called storage type. Is that like $5,000 for everybody, or do they have it kind of on a sliding scale? But
it's based on your velocity. I'm still working right now to determine exactly what it is. I know what it is for my account. Some people are saying it's 6 months worth of inventory. Some people are saying it's 4 months worth of inventory, based on the last 30 days of sales. I've found mine is my last 30 days times 7. But we're still trying to determine exactly what it is. We haven't been able to nail down exactly what the formula is. And then we also don't know what is going to happen with seasonality. We've got Prime Day coming up. What's going to happen with, the additional inventory needed for Prime Day? And, I think that what Amazon is trying to do, they're trying to clear house and get the slow moving products, get rid of the slow moving products. And I think that's what it's going to force people to do, whether it's, placing removal orders to make room for some of those, larger sellers. It's probably, removal orders or sell through and just not restock as much. But all of these things are just forcing people to have to be better at inventory management. It's going to cause more problems than, I think, than it's going to help for a lot of people. But it is, it is forcing that issue.
Yeah, it does. I don't think I've ever heard of Amazon inventory being such a problem until the past 2 years, or really the past year. But I started hearing about it about 2 years ago. Well, before COVID, when I first talked to Chelsea, actually, I believe I spoke with you and I believe it was Dan at the time. And I thought it was genius, but I didn't hear anything from Amazon about inventory. And I know inventory management, obviously being in supply chain, is so important, right? Yeah. You have carrying costs, you have holding costs, you have a lot of capital that can be tied up. And when you even said like Amazon told you to contact your carriers and to return it back to you, that sounds expensive. And that sounds like a logistical nightmare. It sounds like you're going to have to coordinate with your even your warehouses that might have already filled the space that they stored those goods in. And now they're going to have to, you know, get the trucks back. You might have to pay some truck waiting time. It just sounds very expensive itself. But that's of course Amazon. It's the way Amazon likes to do things. It's not going to be easy for anyone. There's always going to be a caveat. But yeah, I mean, I haven't heard it until more recently. Do you know why that is? Do you have any little birdies that have told you that Amazon is struggling with inventory?
I mean, I haven't heard that. I think that, you know, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. We're working on a solution. You know, we were one of the only software companies that actually came out with a solution for the IPI limits, pulling that data directly from the Amazon API and then informing sellers what to send based on Amazon's limits. So we're working now. We can't get that number. It's not in the API. So it's so new that, you know, the Amazon API doesn't even have the data. And so, as a matter of fact, we just got off the phone with a representative from the Amazon, you know, the new Amazon API, and he had no idea what we were talking about. He didn't know this was happening at all. So, you know, the fact that the API team doesn't know that this is happening, people are making decisions within Amazon that, you know, they say that they talk to sellers. They, you know, one of the things they positioned in the email that they sent out was that they talked to sellers, they listened to us, and they made these changes for us. But if they really talked to us, they wouldn't have done this. You know, they wouldn't have done it the way that they did it.
Yes.
So I do think that there are storage issues. And I think that, you know, as we are seeing, it takes 3 weeks for things to check in. Why is that? You know, they've got to be having issues, right? And I think that they just don't want to have to handle that anymore. They don't want to. I like to say they want to be a distribution channel. They don't want to be a storage facility. And that's what they've become over time, is a storage facility for all the crap that, you know, people can't sell. So they're trying to position it to make it so uncomfortable for you to sell slow moving products that you don't fill their warehouses with crap, you know. I think is kind of the long and the short of it. The way they've structured the storage is very strange to me. They have, you know, storage types being standard, oversized, apparel, footwear, and then they have, I believe it's aerosol, which is a hazmat category. Each of those categories, if you're starting out as a new seller, you have 1,000 units for each of those categories, you know, and I could have, you know, more depending on what my velocity is. The only thing is, why can't I have, if I'm never going to sell an oversized product or apparel or footwear, why can't I have that extra storage in standard? They're not, you know, they said they're making it flexible. I would like to see them actually make it flexible. If I've got, you know, a new seller has 200 cubic feet in each category times 5, but if you're only selling in standard, you only have 200 cubic feet as opposed to 1,000 cubic feet. That's a huge difference. So it doesn't really make sense the way that they have structured it. But, you know, a lot of what Amazon does doesn't quite make sense.
Right.
Do you think that's a heavy reliance on just automation? Because I do know that if they are oversized, they can't go to certain Amazon FBA centers just because they can't cross them through the conveyor belt. They typically have higher labor forces there. I have a buddy that works at Amazon, so he was explaining a little bit about what these challenges are. And, you know, if you have something extremely long, it just won't fit through the conveyor belt, so they can't send it there.
Right.
Do you think that might be part of the reason when it comes to automation?
Yeah, I mean, it could, but I mean, I just think that if, you know, Amazon, as smart as they are as an organization, should be a little bit, they should know more about their capacity and what their sellers are selling, unless they're making room for things and they want more, they want to attract more of these other storage types or these other categories, right? They did launch Amazon Wardrobe, which, you know, because there's now the apparel and the footwear categories. they did launch those sections of Amazon. So they are pushing, just as they were pushing in grocery, and then they ended up buying out Whole Foods. They are making a play in the clothing space as well. So it's possible that that's part of their move. But I think that maybe they just should structure it a little bit differently to isolate and not to have this kind of cookie cutter one size fits all. Everybody gets all types of storage.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, as being a seller yourself and obviously working with sellers, what do you think is the number one inventory management mistake that new sellers make?
That new sellers make? I think, a lot of new sellers don't order enough inventory. And it's funny to say that. You say that inventory, you don't order enough inventory. You can't, at this point, send all that inventory to Amazon. So you essentially have to have a 3PL. But I would think that the number one mistake that sellers tend to make is not sending enough inventory or not being aggressive enough in marketing that inventory, and really paying attention to, it's a fine balance, because you can have a product take off and you don't order soon enough, or you could just not be aggressive enough and try to make money on, your first, say, 500 units, and then nothing ever happens and it stagnates. So I think that's that fine balance between marketing well enough and then watching that inventory so that you know when to order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a difficult game, and I've played it in an actual game. In my capstone for my degree, we had to play like the stock market, and then we had to do this other thing with inventory and your sales. And I was like, thank God for the folks in my group in that group project. That's the one and only time I'll say that, because I was like, I don't have the mind for this. This is not my forte.
Yeah. It really comes down to having a system. A lot of people don't have a system. They do it on gut feel. But you need to know, when do I need to send inventory? What is my lead time? And kind of like work it backwards and really plan it out. And I think a lot of people are just doing it based on gut feel.
And I was just going to ask, that is a struggle. What would you suggest that they do then? Because, if you could wave a magic wand and fix all of this for them, what would you suggest that they do?
Yeah. So the first thing that I always suggest is to have a buffered stock and to operate off of a buffer stock. It's also known as a safety stock. And, the easiest way to think about it is, if you have gas in your car and then you have the, empty light comes up. And then once the empty light comes up, that you have to go and fill your tank with gas. Well, you're not going to end up at the side of the road in the next 2 miles. You have probably 25 miles to get to the gas station to fill your tank with gas. And buffer stock is the same idea. It's making sure that you are sending enough inventory enough in advance so that you don't hit zero, right? So it could be 30 days. I always want to keep 30 days of buffer stock no matter what. So I'm going to send inventory in so that it arrives by the time I hit 30 days and instead of arriving by the time I hit zero. Because anything that goes wrong you want to build a cushion to prevent things like Amazon takes 3 weeks to check in my inventory, or, more topically, the Suez Canal is backed up with a freight ship that gets stuck, and blocks another 300 freight ships from delivering inventory. All of these things that could happen if you cut it too close, you have the issue of running out of stock before you actually get your inventory checked in.
Yeah, safety stock. That's the term we learned actually in industrial engineering also. But where would you suggest that they keep this? And how do you suggest even putting together a safety stock plan when you might not have a proven sales history? Let's say you're launching a new product. It could be your second product and your first one's fairly successful. And this is, I think, the case for a lot of sellers where they want to start to expand. What would you suggest that they do when it comes to safety stock?
Yeah. So for people who are private label, and I assume most people listening to the call are private label, since we do talk about importing inventory, when it takes a long time for your inventory to arrive, you need to have enough inventory. The more things that can go wrong, the more safety stock that you should have. So, if you're importing locally and it takes 10 days for your inventory to arrive, there's going to be a lot less that can go wrong than if you're importing from China and then, there's a hurricane off the coast of China, you get stuck in customs, all the things that can go wrong. Amazon takes forever to check in your inventory. So you need to have a longer lead time if you have, more things that could go wrong. But a good rule of thumb for private label, now it might be a little bit different. You might have to prioritize, having more buffer stock for your bigger sellers and less for your, slower movers, simply because, you'd rather run out of your slower movers than you would, your best sellers. But, it's important to keep enough inventory at Amazon. And the other thing to keep in mind is there's something called Geo Ranking. And Geo Ranking is the concept of Amazon is actually looking at how you're performing in the various different parts of the country or parts of the territory. And they're also looking at how much inventory you have available. And if you don't have enough inventory in a certain area for them to hit that 2-day prime shipping, if they don't think they're going to be able to deliver on time, they're potentially going to push you down the ranking in that area. So you could search in your area and you could be fine, but you could be lower in the ranking in another area, or your ads that you're bidding on could potentially not be shown in that area and your competitor is getting more sales in that area because Amazon wants to be able to fulfill their agreements with the customer. And they basically have two essentially agreements with the customer. One is that, if your product is bad, they have a good review or a return policy or replacement policy. And the other is this 2-day prime shipping, right? They don't promise that your product is going to be good. They don't promise that they're going to have the best stuff. Their promise, that's your promise to your customer. Amazon's promise is that they're going to give you that product in 2 days. And if you don't like it, you'll get your money back.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's the first that I've heard of the Geo Ranking, because we've had conversations with folks before and they've shared with us, off live stream what their product is and their brand. And they've said, I have top spot. And then I look them up here in a different part of the country or even the world for some, and it's not. And I don't know to say anything. I'm just like,
yeah.
Okay.
Where do they find that?
Yeah. Where do they?
Is that? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I would say that if you're interested in checking that out, you can actually change your location. So at the top of Amazon, if you're on Amazon.com, at the top of left of the screen, it'll say your name and it will say your zip code. So you could change your zip code. And once you change your zip code, you should be able to see potentially a different ranking. So, for your main keyword, type it in, take a look. You can always have a friend do it too in a different place, but that's probably the easiest way, unless they're picking up IP, your IP address. But I don't, I haven't personally checked it there. So, you might want to test it out both ways and see.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say maybe that's something to do like incognito window. Does that help with that?
Yeah, incognito, and then change the change your zip code. Yeah.
Interesting.
But Amazon doesn't give you a list of like the top states that you sell to or anything like that, right? That would be too easy.
Yeah, some softwares will be able to show you that, but Amazon itself doesn't. Like, I know personally that the bulk of sales, the bigger selling states, at least for me, and I believe for a lot of people, California, New York, Texas, and Florida are big for buying products on Amazon. And, that's for, and then it'll vary by a different category as well.
And so what options do sellers have nowadays in the supply chain? And we sort of covered this interesting concept that I don't think a lot of sellers know of, which is safety stock. But when they do need to get more inventory and rely less on this just-in-time supply chain that we have developed closer and closer to being really that just-in-time, it's like you're placing or exactly what day to place an order.
Yeah.
What solutions are out there for them?
Yeah. So there's a couple of places to store your safety stock. You don't have to store it all in Amazon. And, even more so, you don't want to do that because of the recent changes, but you can store it at a third-party warehouse, either locally, or another option is to work with your supplier. One of the things that can be done with a supplier is that they only ship a partial order. So let's say, you order 3 months worth of inventory and you ship 2 months, 1 month of inventory goes to Amazon, 1 month goes to your local warehouse. And then you say, hold the third month of inventory. And what can usually be worked out in terms of payments is that they'll hold it usually for up to 3 months, and they can hold that inventory and usually not even charge you. So you've got a month's worth of, a couple months worth of free storage. And then once you have to ship that inventory, you go and place your other order. And that's how some of our users have been successful is, just using the Chinese warehouse as an additional warehouse. You pay the 30% upfront or whatever your terms are. And then the other 70%, you only pay 70% on what you ship out from the warehouse, from the Chinese warehouse, and then the other percentage, the other 70% of that, additional inventory doesn't have to be paid until it ships out. So that's something that often is worked out to help with cash flow, because obviously, keeping a safety stock or a buffer stock is going to be difficult on cash flow. So that's another way to make sure that you're not, putting out 100% of that payment.
But that's a two-way road, right? That's not everyone is going to be able to get this. First of all, if you're new to this, if you're a new buyer to this factory and you're negotiating on something like MOQ, I think it's going to be hard to also leverage, hey, store my customized product and I'm only going to pay you 30%.
Yeah.
So I guess, can we also clarify that is solely based on relationships? Is that something we agree on?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, if you're, very, very good at negotiating, I don't want to say that, not that no one can get something like that, but relationships definitely and track record have something to do with being able to say, that that's what you want to do. And if you can't get something like that in your first go, you might look at what are the rates for storing at a Chinese warehouse. It might be cheaper to store at a Chinese warehouse, and you might be able to do the same thing. It would cost you a little bit more, but you might be able to do the same thing and have it be less expensive than, say, a local warehouse.
Yeah, because I don't want someone to also get the wrong idea that this is 100% doable all the time, because someone is going to misinterpret it and say, hey, I heard on the podcast that someone can store this for me for free. And then how does this tie into SoStocked? So first of all, what exactly is SoStocked? And how do sellers use this to improve their inventory?
Yeah. So SoStocked came about because I was trying to solve my own problem. I actually went to a friend of mine and said, hey, you should make your software do this. And he said, I don't really want to do that. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to just have to find somebody, maybe I should do this. And, 2 weeks later, I met Dan Fernandez, who's the co-founder of Thomason.com. And, I'd known that he had, a track record of building good software companies. So I basically pitched him the idea, and, he went with it, and we built out SoStocked. And what SoStocked is when I started doing my research on the different software solutions, because it was taking so long for me to download the reports, plug them in, just the amount of time that it was taking me to handle the inventory side of things and to get really good at inventory management, I was thinking there has to be an easier way. But then when I tried different softwares, they didn't do what I wanted them to do. And so when I went to my mastermind groups and asked people, what are you using? They would say, well, we've tried everything. Nothing seems to work. We're back to spreadsheets. And to me, that kind of came up as a red flag and an opportunity. Well, if we can do it on a spreadsheet, we have to be able to do it in the software. And so what we found out was that spreadsheets actually seem to work better than an algorithm. You have this algorithm. People don't know where the numbers come from. If, I'm coming from accounting, where you have to balance the books. You need to know where all the numbers are coming from. Who, what, 1 + 2, equals 3. that's easy math. If you can't tell me how you got the number, then I don't trust it, and if I can't say, well, I got, that 1 + 1 = 2, but I also want to add another 2, and I want to make it 5, if the tool wouldn't let me do that either, then I didn't want it either. So there's just kind of this ability to understand and trust, as well as the ability to plug in data and manipulate the data to do what you want it to do. So, the concept of, more about your business than an algorithm. And we can't just take the past history, and we can't just take, the data that Amazon gives us of what happened before. We also have to take what your plans are, what your marketing plans are. Do you have a lightning deal coming up? Are you working with an influencer? Do you plan to, spike your PPC campaign? Those things also need to be plugged in. And so the system works in such a way that you're able to take past data and then add your own future marketing plans to come up with, when do I need to order? How much do I need to order? And, how much safety stock do I need to have? And it'll calculate all of that, because, inventory can be a really complex thing. And if you don't have all of those pieces, one number is off, then the inventory, forecast is basically useless.
Mm-hmm. And so do you plug in your own predictions also? Like if you're working with an influencer, do you estimate how many conversions or sales you're going to get from that?
Yeah. So you can say, okay, I'm running this promotion with this influencer, for these 5 days. And over the 5 days, we expect to sell 1,000 units. So you can put, from this date to this date, and then you plug in 1,000, and then it will plug it into, we call it the inventory timeline. It's actually a daily count of what's going to be happening with your inventory. The sales that are going to happen, the orders that are going to be coming in and coming into Amazon, anything that's going to be coming into your warehouse, any transfers, and then any sales that you have as well planned.
Wow. That's a pretty cool tool.
And then also what you have inbound, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
from your
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, all of that is factored in. And then, your lead times are factored so that when are you supposed to order. And there's actually, we call it simultaneous forecasting. You should be doing if you have a 3PL, you should be doing a forecast for transferring from your warehouse to Amazon. And then when am I supposed to order? So there's actually two forecasts going on at the same time.
Interesting.
How did that account for the past year? and I ask that because we're seeing things, and these are, real problems, like Amazon check-in times, like ports having dozens of vessels backed up, like the Suez Canal impacting the East Coast now. It's not just, Europe. A lot of people think it's just, the interaction between Asia and Europe. Well, there was a lot of ships. There was a lot of containers. There's already a global container shortage. And now we're seeing the impact on the East Coast here in the U.S. How does SoStocked take all these factors into account?
Yeah. So, at that point, that's when people essentially started lengthening out their lead times and bulking up their buffer stocks. So they can go in and, in a normal time, it might be, that your lead time is 60 days. We would advise users, okay, we'll lengthen it out to what is really happening. We have this private Facebook group where there's a little bit of a sounding board, and, how long are you seeing it's taking for things to check in, or, whatever. So you would have essentially, the lead times be increased. So it's basically just very easily go in and you can say, okay, change it from 60-day lead time to a 90-day lead time, and then apply it to all products from this supplier or all products across the catalog. And it's just a couple of clicks of a button and everything is recalculated. Same thing for buffer stock. Okay, 30 days hasn't been good enough. I actually want 30 days of buffer stock in my, at Amazon, and another 30 days at my warehouse. Click apply all, and then it recalculates.
And then for new products, Well, I actually had a different question. Does this account for, or does this have any data or statistics on expenses? So when I say expenses, like the cost of LCL shipments versus what a 20-foot FCL or a 40-foot FCL would cost. The way that I'm imagining it is someone can enter all this information in, and when they have a, let's say a restock that's supposed to be coming in, they could sort of start to account for what those expenses would be. Does SoStock offer that?
That's the plan. So we haven't gotten to that point. That's always been the plan. We are finalizing some of the most valuable parts of the inventory, just, kind of streamlining that. And then once we're done with that, the plan is, starting mid-year to move into the cash flow piece. So just as we say, there's forecast modeling, forecast modeling being, you're plugging in additional data. So it's not just, what the system is telling you. It's, well, what happens if I have a sale here? And what happens if I, didn't ship that inventory, modeling out scenarios. The same thing would be where we want to go with cash flow, being able to have, all of that data in there, and then simply say, okay, well, what happens if I do, I have my LTL rate, I have my, loose cartons rate, what happens if I, ship it this way? Oh, the profit goes down. Okay, let me try to ship it that way. Okay, good, the profit goes up. And then on a monthly basis, if you're ordering, say, 6 months of inventory on one PO, the monthly profit for each of those products is going to be actually less. So you want to see, okay, well, does it make more sense to order six months of inventory and store it? Or does it make more sense to order, 2 months of inventory, ship more frequently, and then not pay storage? We want to be able to see what is your best case scenario in terms of profitability on, on a supply chain and logistics level. That's kind of where the software is going to be heading.
You solved a very magical and majestic problem, I would say, which is optimization of supply chain, if you can figure that stuff out. Because that's something that, you are taking so many different case scenarios. Case scenarios that I think a lot of sellers wish. There's always a question of what if. Right? What if I could do this or what I could do that? And the natural first thing that Lisa always says is, well, can't you split A/B test that? Isn't there a service that splits A/B test that?
Yeah,
sure, everything.
But there aren't too many scenarios when it comes to supply chain. And that is the crude reality of it. The most fundamental foundation to every single e-commerce business is going to be supply chain. And if you can solve that, I would love to pick your brain because you are a genius. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing that come out and see how sellers can interact with it. Because that sounds like it's that would solve a ton of problems, and it would help out with specifically scenarios like these where we have a global pandemic, maybe not a pandemic again, but we have supply chain disruptions, and we could be solve those what ifs early on. So I'm excited. No, that's great stuff.
Yeah. That's it's the place that no one has gone yet, and we see just an opportunity to really as a seller myself, as I'd seen my profit kind of creeping down, I knew that there were holes that I had to plug, and so we want to find those holes and help people to plug them to be more profitable, because we talk a lot about scaling, but no one's really talking about the efficiency of, they talk about cash flow, but no one talks about, okay, well, how do you increase your cash flow? Well, it's efficiency on supply chain and inventory management is a huge way that you're actually missing out. If you're running out of stock, the amount of money that you waste, trying to get the stock, air shipping and, all of the money that you paid in ads to even stock out, like that all gets very expensive. So, supply chain and inventory are really the true conversations when it comes to scaling, and people are just starting to wake up to talk about it. I believe the industry is finally kind of growing up into becoming, full-fledged businesses by having these conversations. And it's been stuck in the marketing space for a very long time. And we've been internet marketers, and now we're finally becoming business owners as we have these conversations.
Definitely.
Very eloquently put.
Yeah, absolutely. Just put a nice little bow on it. And so for SoStocked, do you guys work with sellers of all sizes?
Yeah, I mean, our best, beginners may be okay with just spreadsheets, but we have had some people just starting out and they say, I just want to get it right from the start. But our kind of sweet spot is, say 6, 7, and 8, and low 8-figure sellers. We are working on integrations with other platforms. So, in terms of the kind of higher end 8-figure sellers, it hasn't been as much of it's been a little bit more difficult for them if they've got, a lot of traction on, say, Shopify or Walmart. But once those integrations come in, which should be in the next, a couple of months, maybe a little pushed back, given this new update that we're going to have to contend with. But that's basically our sweet spot. And we do have a free, and I can share this, in the comments, like we do have a free inventory spreadsheet where we put a lot of our features that are in the software. They are put into the spreadsheet so people can get used to some of these techniques of, putting your marketing in there, putting your buffer stock in there, so that by the time their business gets to the point of needing SoStocked, they're already used to these principles.
Yeah, that would be great. If we could link that in the description of the video, that would be awesome.
Definitely.
Perfect. And so if anybody has any other questions about SoStocked or about any of the information that you shared here today, how can they get a hold of you? We've got your site up on the screen. It's just www.sostocked.com. But how else can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can go to sostocked.com/connect. That'll be all of my social media, my Clubhouse link to SoStocked, and then also the ability to book a live demo. We have live demos twice a week where they'll be able to talk to my husband or one of our newer guys that we're, training up on the SoStocked system. We're expanding our team like crazy. So, but they'll be able to get someone live who knows the system back and forth.
Good. Perfect. That's awesome. Congrats on the growth. That's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, Chelsea, thank you so much for coming on. Francois, any last questions or points before we sign off?
You don't want to give me that opportunity. She was talking and I already started wondering, are there integrations with warehouse management systems or there's so many more questions.
Yeah. There's so many plans down the road. It's like, we definitely have all of that in mind. We want to be a logistics problem solver, not just an inventory management software.
I love that.
We'll have to have you on again after you guys expand your offering a little bit more.
Yes, I'd love to. That'd be awesome.
Awesome, Chelsea. Well, thank you so much for coming on. If you guys liked this show or any of the information that you heard, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the YouTube channel, anything and everything, just so that we can get more incredible information from leaders like Chelsea out to business owners everywhere. So, Chelsea, once again, thank you so much. And we will be back live on Friday, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Right. Thanks, Chelsea. Bye.
Bye, guys.